These are the Stomping Grounds mission values that you should familiarise yourself with. We have 4 different ones. Firstly, we've got enabling young people to find their authentic selves. Secondly, we've got togetherness in practice and with families and communities. Next, we have responsibility to take care of nature and the planet. Lastly, we have equality of access, which has now been changed to equity of access. This is because we should always be meeting young people and practitioners for where their specific needs are. This induction video will go into depth on why we bring these values and how we bring these values into the woods.
So I guess one part of Together for me is about how Stomping Grounds works together as a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we make sure that we're communicating well with each other, and we spend time debriefing at the end of sessions.
And we have that same sort of shared goal together, don't we? So the delivery staff in the woods will kind of work closely with office staff and management teams so that we're working towards that shared goal together.
Yeah, definitely. And whilst we do have an organisational structure, we've tried to keep it as horizontal as possible, because everybody's coming with different experiences and different skills, and it's important that everybody's voice is heard so everyone can contribute to our kind of like overall aim in the best way that they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like that when we're in the woods as well. So when we're in with a big group of our young people, we don't have that sense of a kind of adults being separate to our young people. We're really sort of together in our days.
That's a really good point as well. And simple things like when we eat snacks or cook food together, we share that as a team. So we are part of a team with the young people. We're not delivering something to the young people. We're not instructing them on something. We're not separating ourselves as staff. We're part of that, as that sort of holistic approach to let's go on this journey with you rather than let's lead you somewhere.
Yeah. And that's so important, that sense of being together, you know, with our young people, isn't it? It's not like, well, when you're hungry, there's a time to eat, and when I'm hungry, I'll, eat somewhere else. If we're hungry early in the day, we might be like, oh, I'm really hungry, I'm going to sit and have my snack now. And that might be during snack time for other young people, but importantly, like staff and young people together in that. And just sharing that feeling of like, yeah, let's eat our lunch early if we're hungry today. If we've kind of loads of energy running, then why not just eat early?
I think we allow the young people to learn and discover together as well. So if young people have an idea on something that they want to do, even if it's a little bit out there, we don't know how to do it, or we need to investigate, we'll say let's do it together and let's all find out together. If it is a little bit risky, we'll find out together.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. We don't know the outcome, do we? So we're making that same journey together.
Yeah. I think as well that the other thing that together means to me, it expands wider than just Stomping Grounds and the young people. I think what we're really good at and what's really important is that we work with the teams that work around those young people. We work with the families around that young person, so that what we do forms part of a wider kind of network, I suppose. And that's important because we can learn a lot from those other professionals that might be working with that young person. We can learn a lot from parents who know their young people so well, but also we can then contribute to that, and we can give them thoughts, ideas, strategies that they can use at school, that they can use at home, which widens the impact of what we do and brings everybody around a table with that young person and their journey at the centre of that.
Absolutely. It's that sort of whole team holistic approach, isn't it? And that's so important. And like listening to our young people as well, like listening to what they have to say, things they want to tell us, and then being able to feed that back to the team so that their voice is really included.
And I suppose the final part of it for me is that we don't exist as kind of like a charity out there on its own in the middle of a woodland doing its thing. It's really important that we are doing our thing as part of a wider community and as part of a wider society. So that would mean, where possible, making links with other community groups, making sure that we're in touch with the schools, other landowners, and that everything we're doing feeds into what they're doing and vice versa, so that we're not you know, it's important, I think, when you're working in communities, alongside communities, that you also have an awareness and work with other groups that might be working with the same young people that you are.
Yeah. It's like an ecology, isn't it? And you're all part of that same ecology, and what you know, what you do will affect someone else, and so you have to be able to be, you know, communicating with each other and working together to serve those needs, so there's not an imbalance.
Yeah. The responsible value to me is all about our responsibility to the planet, and also our responsibility to support young people to better understand that as well.
Yeah, and there are very different ways that we can do that, and that often sort of crops up like in conversation, doesn't it? So things like cooking food on the fire, that's often a big conversation that we have about, you know, what kind of food we're going to cook at what point in the year. So sort of eating fruit seasonally and having that conversation about what's readily available, and then down to like vegetarian food as well.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we're a vegetarian setting probably 99% of the time, and that some young people have never tried meat alternatives, they've never tried a vegetarian diet, and because it's cooked on a campfire it's a little bit more exciting. They try it and often are surprised that they actually enjoy it, and so that's like something that can roll out further, because they might take those habits wider than just here. They might take them home with them, they might influence friends.
We often have these conversations, don't we, like at holiday clubs and that, about, oh, why are we having vegetarian food? I've not tried it, you know, vegetarian hot dog before, and that does, it spirals that conversations like between young people and then between us, and really explaining our different reasons for that and discussing it together.
We also make sure that the resources that we're using are biodegradable, responsibly sourced, and we try and use the woodland as much as we can to get resources from like coppice and hazel, or using resources like pine cones, rather than bringing in plastic things from outside or things that have been manufactured or bought just to be used once and thrown away.
And I think what you're saying about like responsibly sourced stuff as well, like that's quite important. And I remember when I was showing a new young person round, and I was saying, you know, we try really hard not to use Amazon as a source of materials. We'll try and find something that's local, that's been made locally, or that's a responsible company. So he made a bet with me that if I bought anything off Amazon before Christmas, that I had to climb this tree that was pretty much impossible to climb. So that was like really funny, because then when I next saw him when he'd started the provision, he was like, "Did you buy anything from Amazon?" And I was like, "I did." Conversations that can be had in a playful way, but you know, that they're just small little nuggets of there's a different way that we can be responsible consumers in this society.
And I think we also try and look after the things that we have got, and sort of instill that into the children as well, about looking after the things that we've got, so that we don't need to go and buy more and think whether we can fix things or whether we can use them in a different way, to make the most of the things that we have got. Yeah.
And the same goes for the environment and what's here. So collecting wild garlic, and making sure that we're only taking what we need, so that the plants can thrive and continue to grow, and collecting firewood and using that appropriately, and not having huge big raging fires when really we're just cooking some food, and also having that sort of responsibility to the planet, and not producing emissions where we don't need to.
And if there are just other ways that we can keep ourselves warm that don't involve burning firewood for many hours on the go.
There's been a few conversations recently as well about the land itself, because obviously we're here in the middle of a woodland that doesn't really belong to us as humans. There's so many other things that live here, and we do have an impact. Our footfall has a great impact on the land, and we acknowledge that, and I think we share that acknowledgement with the young people that we work with, which is, you know, you can see the difference between where we've been and where we haven't been, and we're trying to keep it that way. It's like we understand that you may want to go off an adventure into that wild patch, but actually we don't want to take our impact further. There may be ground nesting birds there. Let's consider different ways of moving through this woodland that have a minimal impact on what we're doing as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's been something recently as well, hasn't it? It's sort of changed the route that some of our young people come in because there's some of those ground nesting birds. And we can't risk, you know, walking down the main path, and our young people will sort of say that to us as well, so they've thought about that and they've remembered it and really taken that on board, and changed their routes in as a result of that.
Hi, I've been asked to share my thoughts and ideas on how we can be acting, modelling, working responsibly as stomping grounds practitioners. So I've been thinking about different areas. So one area for me is food. We don't have any meat at stomping grounds. That's just not only because of food safety, but also because we all know that meat has got a big carbon footprint and impact on biodiversity on our world. I do try and avoid dairy, although I concede and bring cheese for our pizza wraps, for example. But I always have the vegan variety, just to kind of have it as an option, to normalise it, to bring it into the mainstream as a choice. I avoid food that's not seasonal or that's travelled a lot of air miles. Another area is fire lighting. I often bring dry firewood to sessions, because obviously burning wet wood is not good for our lungs or the young people's lungs, and also not good in terms of emissions. So I try and avoid having to burn really wet wood, although it's around us, but if it's too wet, it's too damaging. Yes, and maybe limiting the fire only where it's kind of serving a purpose, whether that's cooking or fire skills practice or an activity that requires fire or whatever, but avoiding fires where there is no proper need for it, I suppose, I think. And I was thinking about how we are privileged to work on stomping grounds, ancient woodland, with all its biodiversity and things growing and living there, and how we are trying to minimize our impact. I mean, I think I always think about this, like, I think we're all part of nature, so yes, we will leave traces and we're part of it, so we're there, but to be mindful and to kind of stay in our designated sites and footpaths as much as possible, so we can talk to our young people about why that's important, why that's a good idea, sharing our thoughts and ideas there. We've got a great compost toilet where all the poo is composted, and we only use biodegradable natural cleaning products and avoid any harsh chemicals. Other areas, one area that I'm really struggling with is transport. I feel really bad driving to work. I have tried to go on my electric bike, but I found out that I'm not fit enough to cycle from Hexham to Breda and back and run a full session. So either I'm going to get fitter or I need another idea, but maybe we can work this out all together, like car shares, picking up from stations, all that kind of stuff. Would be great to have some ideas on it, I guess. What other thoughts have I had? Yeah, sharing ideas. I think, like, talking to young people about what we can do and that we're passionate about the world and what happens to it. Yeah, showing that we're not powerless, that we can have a voice in whatever shape or form that is, to influence those in power, to look after it better. One thing I've forgotten to mention is arts and crafts materials. I try and avoid bringing plasticky stuff. I sometimes have like tape, but I'm thinking of not bringing that anymore. And I find it really hard to get hold of natural yarn. I've got some cotton yarn and twine and things, but if young people want to do some braiding and weaving, I sometimes have acrylic wool, but then I'm really careful to pick all the rest up off the floor so they don't get sort of scattered about. It's really hard to get hold of natural wool here, but definitely no googly eyes or sequins or glitter or anything like that. I think that's another important point, and again, you know, sharing with young people why we don't bring things like that and why we can be really creative with the natural things around us.
So yeah, I think like equity of access is fundamentally what Stomping Grounds was set up for, which is about the idea that being outdoors and the kind of typical bushcraft stuff should not be reserved for the rich white man, which historically it has been a middle class white male privilege, and everything that we're about is about opening this beautiful experience that we all benefit from to everybody, and doing what we can within the means we've got to make sure that anybody can benefit. And, you know, there are certain things that we do to open that door.
So we've got the positive action spaces, which provide free spaces for people that need them. Then we've also got our funded sessions like the holiday clubs. We also work in schools, which mean that we're accessing more young people than potentially can come to the woods.
Youth groups.
We also have a number of youth groups. We do them in Duke's Hag, we do them in Durham, Gateshead in Chopwell, and that means that people they have more access because they're in lots of different places.
So for example, Chopwell particularly I feel really strongly about, because everyone thinks of Chopwell and think of Chopwell Woods, but we're not basing our youth club in Chopwell Woods, because actually Chopwell Woods is not in the heart of Chopwell. It's kind of between Chopwell and another village, and it's a visitor attraction for people who travel from outside of Chopwell. We base our youth provision in a scrubby bit of council woodland that is in the heart of the village, that young people walk through every day, and to me that does open that door for them, because they're not having to move outside of their comfort zone to access this thing. It's right where they are.
Yeah, that's the same for a lot of our other sites as well, isn't it? So sites in Gateshead, sites down in County Durham, they aren't just, like you say, kind of based around those, you know, beautiful areas of woodland which are tourist attractions in their own right. So they're, you know, accessible on different public transport routes as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Something that I really felt about lockdown was how people who lived close to nature were talking about the beauty of these outdoor spaces they could access, but what we really need to enable communities to do is to find that beauty in a crack in the pavement, because not everybody can get into these spaces, not everybody feels comfortable in these spaces, but if we can encourage that connection even on a really small level in the thing that is in front of them that they are comfortable with, then that's going to open up a whole new sort of world of opportunities if you can take those slow small steps.
I think another big part of equity of access is that we create a space for all children and young people to be able to I guess find their home within a provision or a setting or within a group, and also for those that aren't able to access group provision, we also offer sort of one-to-one sessions as part of the alternative provision. So it is thinking about each child or young person as an individual, and considering what their needs are, and then looking at what support is needed in order to enable that young person to access the environment or the group setting in a way that's going to work for them. Sort of starting where the young person is, rather than sort of expecting them to meet us where we are. It's meeting each child and young person at their starting point.
And that can move with their journey, can't it? So that equity might look different in a few months down the line, it might look different at different points. And just kind of moving that access with them as they go, and being flexible to respond to things. I think that's really important as well. You're not just kind of coming in as the same person and leaving as the same person. We kind of have that awareness that everyone will change on different routes. And meeting that, you know, where and when we need to.
I think a big part of it for me as well has been the move to become a charity, because that obviously it opens up the opportunities for us to seek more funding to provide more of these opportunities, and it's not always about money, but money obviously does help, and sometimes it's less about the finances. It could be a cultural barrier, it could be a physical barrier, but actually being able to apply for grants to try and remove those barriers is really important.
We'll do what we can, I think, to meet the needs of each child and young person.
And then try and kind of offer ideas of further support as well. It's not just about what happens when you're here, is it? It's about that kind of, that wider sense of working together with that young person, with that kind of team as well, and ensuring that access is available to them, you know, however they need it.
Could be changing the communication that we use, the language that we use, so that children can understand what we're saying. Or supporting children with visuals.
And even as a staff team, I feel that we're quite good as well about just enabling that as a staff team as well, and just really listening to people and, like you say, changing the way we give information in certain ways, if that's a better way to receive it or an easier way to receive it, and just being responsive to those needs so that everyone is able to take part in those same conversations.
So I wonder as well if what we're trying to do here is to become a lived experience organisation, so that the people that are supporting our young people in our communities have experienced personally some of the challenges that those young people are experiencing, and again that is about having that mirror into a world of. I remember it was with you, Pickle, when we were working in the school, and you said to one of the young people, I've got ADHD, and his jaw dropped, and he was like, you've got ADHD and you've got a job.
You've got a job, yeah.
And it's just like, it's like there's a whole world out there of acceptance and of inclusion and of, you know, different ways of being and different ways of being human, and you don't have to follow this one narrow path. Here's a whole host of different opportunities, and here's some sort of really positive role models of people who've done that and have made their own way, and that feels quite special. I think we've still got work to do. I think as an organisation there are lots of minoritised groups that we don't represent, and we are aware of that, and we're trying to work on that. But I think we've got a model that is starting to show that kind of lived experience.
Yeah, just being able to, like you say, kind of reflect that back and have those conversations with people about, you know, things that you might share, you know, ways that you might then diverge, but still be, you know, under the same sort of label, but you can still talk about the differences and the similarities, and just have that other person to reflect back off of is really helpful.
And I think it gives us, if we're really open about what, as employees, about what we need, it opens us up to being able to communicate with the team about what our needs are. So, for example, I really struggle to write emails, and to read emails and messages, so I prefer to get voice messages. And feeling comfortable sharing that with the wider team means that it improves my quality of work. It lowers my stress level because I don't have to do all these huge emails or access loads and loads of information. And I think having that openness and safety to be able to share what my needs are is really, really, really useful.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? I mean, that's that safety that we're trying to kind of cultivate with our young people, but having it as staff and knowing that you're in that safe space where you can share these things. I remember after one of my first sessions here with Stomping Grounds, the kind of staff debrief at the end, somebody asked me how I had found the session, how I had found the day, like how it had been for me, and that has always just stuck with me as this really powerful thing that my experience as part of that day was also thought about and cared about. It wasn't just me as a kind of worker coming in and doing a job and you know, and it was just only about young people. It's about how we all interact together in that space, and that was really important.
And I think if our role in all of this is to try and support the young people of today who might be experiencing various challenges, to try and support them to understand what it is to be human, the good bits and the bad bits, and how as that human you navigate this wide world around us. We can only do that if we are fully human ourselves, and we can only be that if we're honest and we're transparent and we're completely authentic in like, this is me, this is how I exist, and this is how I present myself. And you know, that to me is fundamental to this whole experience for everybody in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's something that I have learned over the years, is how important it is to be transparent to a certain extent about the things that I struggle with, because a lot of young people look to adults and think they've got everything nailed, everything is under control, but really as a neurodivergent person there are things that I will struggle with, and being open and honest about those and saying to a young person, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, I need to take some time out, and they see that, and I hope that they see a person who they think has sort of got it together, but who also needs to take time out for themselves and to look after themselves, and fingers crossed it sort of helps them advocate for themselves in the future, whether they're at work or at school or friendship groups. Yeah, so it's something that I've learned, is that being transparent is okay as an adult, especially to show other neurodivergent children what we really are capable of, and we can succeed, but we might have to tweak it a little bit to make it work for us, and that's okay.
I was thinking about recently about how everyone says, oh, forest school improves children's self-esteem, and I was thinking, what does that actually mean though? It's like to me, self-esteem is knowing yourself. If you know yourself, then you feel comfortable in what you know, then you're solid in your place in the world, and you know what your place in the world is. And that self-knowledge comes with understanding your emotions, understanding your communications with others, understanding those peer groups, but also advocacy of like knowing when to say, I don't enjoy this, I need to do this differently. And to me, that is what self-esteem is. That's where confidence comes from, because you have that knowledge.
Yeah, and you're able to, like I say, advocate almost to yourself, and stand up for yourself sometimes to yourself, and just then be able to kind of verbalise that and put that out in the world, and just model doing that and taking that time that you need.
From the get-go, I think equality of access was really good for me with Stomping Grounds, because I think that even from the, like the interview questions were emailed to us, so I could have that, I could look over them. There's multiple reasons why that made it more comfortable, made it more equitable to access, made us feel like I had a fairer chance.
Absolutely, because it shouldn't be a kind of like a memory test, is it? That's not what it's about. And so giving you that chance to just sit with how that's going to feel, and do a bit of prep in your own mind to feel ready. Did you feel that kind of when you went into that room that you had like that kind of better chance to succeed?
Yeah, definitely. And I felt like I wasn't going to be judged for not being able to think of things on the spot, or like not being able to and just knowing that like neurodivergency was okay, and maybe it's that there was like, and even like afterwards, after the hiring process, I've been turned away from jobs for being a woman. Like I've been told that, and I think that like coming into it, I was like, right, I'm not going to disclose my disabilities before getting the job, because I know that might hinder my chances. And actually the reaction that I've had from the whole team, not just like management, was just so good, and continues to be. And I bring that into the sessions, like carrying a hot water bottle around when I've got cramps, and
and you shared chocolate with me the other day, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
Important to share.
Yes, it is so important.
I know, exactly, and that's it. You sort of you do, if you're kind of open and we're able to feel safe with each other and communicate, it leads to that being much more accessible, to kind of keep continuing to do your job at a level that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think like in a way it models behaviour for like the young people, like being like, they might be curious on like, oh, why are you carrying a hot water bottle around? Oh, well, it's for my period, but I've got this condition, like, that makes it worse and stuff like that. And just having that conversation and just being like, and like some transparency there and curiosity, and just being like, no, you're allowed to do things differently. Because I think that like, once upon a time I would have been self-conscious about that.
Now just do it everywhere because I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. And you hold that within yourself, and then that is that kind of esteem where you feel, confident in yourself to do that.
Do I treat them slightly differently? Would I be more willing to allow a boy to climb really high up in a tree, but not, sort of be more cautious for a girl? It's kind of thinking about those things really, and like I said before, leveling the playing field really, so that there's that equity for all children and young people to access any of the activities that they choose to do.
Absolutely, we all arrive equal in the woods, don't we? And our language and how we, verbally respond to each other is a massive part of that, I think.
Yeah.
I wonder if resourcing is important in that sense as well, and I'm thinking specifically about younger children and storybooks and reading, like choosing books that have got protagonists from otherwise minoritized groups can be really valuable for, I can't remember the statistic, but it was a ridiculous amount. Way over 7% of kids' books have white male lead characters. And so actually actively seeking out those other books that have chosen a different lead character so that we can amplify those voices over the voice that perhaps has taken all of the limelight in the past, which again is about providing like a mirror, isn't it, into a world that somebody might not have seen themselves in, but also providing a really level base where everybody is represented equally within this setting.
Another example of that is that we sometimes use puppets alongside stories with the younger children, and we had Goldilocks and the three bears, and Daddy Bear had a tie and a collar on this little puppet, and Mummy Bear had like a little frilly apron kind of on. So we're not going to stop using puppets, but we've cut those bits off because they're just not needed. Women go out to work. We're examples of that. And all of these pinafores, that would work well.
Bears don't wear clothes anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a point. Yeah. So just thinking, isn't it, about the resources that we bring in,
the language that we use to describe groups that we might not identify with, and I think it's really important that we check with those people like what terminology we should be using, so that when we're talking about groups of people and communities, that we're using terminology that isn't offensive and that they identify with, because I think that again it's about that kind of like a respect, it's about an equal playing field, and it's about us acknowledging that it's amplifying voices, I suppose, in a way that they want to be amplified rather than the way that we could assume that they want to be amplified.
I think for me, enabling has been part of the learning curve at Stomping Grounds. I think for some young people, they may use language or say things that some people may deem offensive or controversial, and I think for me as a practitioner, realising that they might not actually be the young person's views or opinions, if that makes sense. It's that in their past they've maybe worked with people who have tried to change their opinions very quickly, or tried to influence the young person and give them their worldview very quickly. And I think that sometimes with our young people, the way they may initially present themselves is almost their way of seeing how you're going to react to them. Are you going to jump in like a lot of the adults they've known in the past, and are you going to treat them exactly the same way because they've been used to that, and in a way that's their comfort zone, even though they might not necessarily like it. It's just what they're used to. They know how to react. Oh, this is how I'm treated, so I'm going to say this certain thing, and I know that often triggers an adult, so I'll say that, and then they'll behave the way I know they'll behave, and that kind of proves me right. This is what I thought adults are all like. So for me, stepping back and not immediately giving my opinion on something, or allowing the young person to actually express their thoughts and opinions without being contradicted, enables them to feel heard, but also just be there themselves without having an adult put their opinion upon them. And so I think that's been an important learning curve for me.